Drivers, start your engines!
Hit the pace car! What for? Because you hit every other damn thing out there, I want you to be perfect!
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. It's him, but he talks to me.
Well, I wanna be a race car driver, pretty girls eating from my hand, yeah. Wanna live a life of fun and danger, no sweating working for the man, alright.
Good evening, race fans. Welcome to the Hoobazoo Radio Network and welcome to the Drafting the Circuits. My name is Frank Santoroski. I'll be your host for the next hour as we talk about this past weekend in racing and preview next week. Joining me in the studio, Luis Torres, Richard Youden. Fellas, what's up?
Hey, how's it going?
Still recovering from a humid Nashville.
Humid Nashville, yes. Well, we'll get into talking about Nashville and all the good, the bad, and the ugly about Nashville. But I would be remiss if we didn't open up the show without remembering a certain Mr. Bob Jenkins who passed away a few days ago. As you know, Bob Jenkins has been embroiled in a matter with lung cancer. He stepped away from broadcasting a couple of years ago. There were many tributes for him at that time, folks that wish him well. But I mean, honestly, here's a guy who's been in broadcasting most of my life, and Louise, likely all of your life. And he's, been involved with IMS radio, IMS track announcer, the Indianapolis 500 television broadcast. He was very active in the early years of ESPN. He used to co-host Thursday Night Thunder with Larry Newber. He was part of the NASCAR broadcast team with Ned and Benny. And he's been in motor racing as long as I can remember. He's always just been a wonderful personality for the sport, knowledgeable, easy to listen to, explain stuff to you, and like, the quality I love in most broadcasters is excitable, because he'll be forever known for the call on the 92 Indy 500, where he says, the checkered flag is out, Goodyear makes the move, Al Unser Jr. wins by just a few tenths of a second, perhaps the closest finish in the history of the Indianapolis 500. And that has been played and played and played. And it ranks right up there in one of the greatest calls in all of sports, not all of motorsports, all of sports. I mean, it ranks right up there with Ned Jarrett calling his son, Dale, winning the 500. It ranks right up there with any Super Bowl touchdown pass. So, Godspeed to Bob Jenkins. We're going to miss that guy.
No, for sure. And it's very surreal to think that his last 500 in this earth was the one where he basically, for the lack of words, have witnessed all four of the four-time winners. And I know on Friday, the Friday Carb Day, he was given the Robin Miller Award, also another guy that is fighting through a lot right as well. Even though I think just hear him, no matter, despite the conditions he was going through the last few months, it's one of those that I'll forever savor the moment, because I think he's always said it best that he's a race fan that got lucky. And I think this racing community are forever lucky to have him around for over 40 years of just stock cars, open wheels. First and foremost, he is an open wheel guy at heart. That some people will remember him as more of a stock car commentator, but he's both. But he'll tell you first that he's the forever his heart Indy car racing for sure.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing is he was right there at the, I guess you might call it the cable TV revolution. Mm-hmm. When we went from motorsports was a little niche sport that you would maybe catch some highlights on ABC Wide World of Sports 2 weeks after the race, or a little, tidbit, to actually seeing full live races flag to flag, which, live as they happened, honestly never happened. And I saw a great little blurb. They were talking to Paul Page When Bob Jenkins first signed with ESPN, he was, kind of a little curious as to what he was getting himself into. And he talked to Paul Page and he says, Paul, what is this ESPN? He says, Bob, it's an all day 24-hour sports network. It ain't going to last, but I'll tell you this, take the money and run. Well, of course we know ESPN is still around today.
How did that work out?
Yeah. So, but yeah, Bob was right there at the beginning when we first started to see live broadcast of auto races start to finish. I mean, if you recall, the Indy 500 wasn't broadcast live until 1986, which seems like, a lifetime ago for you young folks. But, that was probably the 12th or 13th Indy 500 I had seen. And the first time I was able to see it as it happened. Before then you had to make sure that if your mom was driving to the grocery store, she didn't have a radio on. Because that's what happened to me in 82. Mom took me to the grocery store to grab some snacks for us to watch the Indy 500 later. And the radio announcer casually mentioned that Gordon Johncock had won the Indy 500.
Oh boy.
and we all know how that one ended. When I finally got to watch it, it was a nail biter. But I mean, knowing how it ended. So, but Bob was right there through all that time where motor racing coverage really took a leap out of the also other sports to prominence of his own, and he was there every step of the way. And again, like I said, he'll be dearly missed. Now, Richard, do you have any fond memories of Bob Jenkins or any good Bob Jenkins stories?
I must admit, it was probably somebody I was never really exposed to much. In terms of my sort of coverage of motorsports in the US, and whenever we watched sort of IndyCar or NASCAR or whatever it was in the UK, they had their own announcers. When I sort of was in it, but from what I've read over the last couple of days, his sort of career and his style does sort of appear to parallel another, great announcer that we lost earlier in the year from the UK side, in Murray Walker. It does sound like they were very similar in their style, and as they use that phrase, they're just a fan that got lucky, which I think is what it's all about. It is when you have somebody that is just purely passionate about what they do, it makes it so much more entertaining for the spectators and the listeners and the viewers.
Yeah, but by all accounts, Bob Jenkins was a huge race fan himself. They says sometimes in the evenings before the race broadcast that they couldn't find him. Why? Because he snuck off to some local short track to see who was racing. Then he'd come back and say, I just saw this kid. His name is Jeff Gordon. You're not going to believe how good this kid is, and that's another great Bob Jenkins story. But I think Bob Jenkins himself put it best when he said, I just wanted to be known as a guy who talked about racing on the radio, but for some reason, people liked me. And gosh, you can't simplify it any more than that, because golly, I sure did like him. So,
yep.
All right. So let's move on and talk about the Nashville race. Louise, you were there all weekend in the heat. Now Nashville is taking a little bit of a beating from fans as far as the race itself, but I think as an event, as a event status, I think they nailed it. I think the city of Nashville did a fantastic job. They had plenty going on. They had some growing pains here and there. They had some issues with volunteers not showing up at certain places, some issues with volunteers not being fully trained as to what they're doing. They had some issues with grandstands not being fully assembled until Sunday, including the grandstand 6, which is the one coming right off of the bridge onto the main part of the course. That was every seat was sold out, although they did finally get that thing put together in time for Sunday. But the race itself, little clunky, get it going. So Louise, I'll just let you grab it from there a little bit.
Let's say where do we begin? First of all, it looked like for a moment it's going to be 26 cars out of 27 because Jimmy Johnson was not on the grid right away. And then I saw I was at the entry of the bridge upwards start finish. It's not literally a start finish, but on the way up to start finish. Then I noticed that Johnson's car is like, oh, he actually made the grid, because I knew they were saying that he was going to get the car repaired, because I looked back to Takuma Sato at Texas where he wrecked in qualifying, couldn't get the car ready in time and had to take a DNS as in did not start. There was a 4-hour window, which I think helped Johnson get in his 4018 get it going, but they also had Alex Palou backup ready.
Right. It's just kind of, if you think about it, it's kind of sad they do all this. The Carvana before every race does this whole thing, pick the livery.
Yeah.
And then this is the livery they chose, and he wrecked that one, so he ends up.
It's a nice looking one. It's probably one of the more better ones compared to the ones in the ones that Portland are offering. The one in Nashville is far better. It's just simple, clean. But of course,
but he ends up with the NTT livery with 48 hastily put on it and the Carvana nose. So, but that's a side issue. Jimmy made the race, which was the important thing.
Yeah, but good grief! Like first they couldn't make a one full lap without a yellow, and then they tried to get it going again, and then there was another yellow. And then I noticed that Marcus Ericsson's front wing was destroyed and Bourdais' rear wing was destroyed. So I was thinking, oh, geez, this is going to knock him out of the championship or be in the cusp, being a title contender. I didn't find out what happened with Ericsson and Bourdais until late in the race when I was looking through Twitter, live tweeting whatever I could, like mostly the caution periods. Then I realized Ericsson flew. He plowed into Bourdais and was just like not the first time Bourdais has had a lot of incidents from behind. That's kind of been part of the tale of his season. Just gets completely ran in the back to and puts him out of contention. But Ericsson, we'll talk more about him later. But it's just caution, breeze, caution, and then as I was working my way down to other parts of the track. Then I heard there was a huge traffic jam. They had to stop the race immediately. Found out that it was a Penske disaster. Will Power had a couple moments not too good. Jimmy Johnson was involved. Cody Ware was involved. James Hinchcliffe was stuck in that ordeal. It took like some of them 5 to 10 minutes to finally get their cars out of the melee, like Ware and Hinchcliffe. And then Johnson was working on the car, but unlike in Formula One, where you could get out of the car and work on the car, in Indycar it was unimproved, so Johnson was subsequently disqualified, finished 26 out of 27 instead of, when you're disqualified, you fall down the order.
Yeah, I thought that was a kind of a amateur move on the Ganassi crew to attempt to work on the car, because they obviously should know better. They know that rule, but
did they work on it? From watching the TV coverage, they just touched it.
I saw Jimmy himself carrying the new nose to the front of the car.
Is the driver allowed to touch the car? Is it like World Rally where drivers are allowed to change a tire or whatever? I don't know.
Oh, I don't know.
Probably not, because apparently all the other guys were in their cars, those who were not damaged.
Yeah, but but whatever they did, I just can't believe that they would have run afoul of such a simple rule and thrown the race away after, Jimmy had a particularly tough weekend already. Maybe
they were worried about damaging it too much, so they deliberately touched it.
Yeah, that's Palou's backup car. We might need that. He's leading. He's leading the championship. Yeah.
Let's. I touched it.
It could be semi-usable for Long Beach, which they're completely contrast, but there are 3 courses nonetheless. But once the red flag was lifted, we still had a couple cars, but it finally got a little bit better. I think then the tire barrier, the water that poured out of the track that made the caution even longer. It was really pushing time because the race started at around 4:45 local, which is very, very late. With sunset going down at 7:45 local. So you were pushing a real tight window with that first red flag, and then that long caution where they're trying to dry up at Speedy Dry, trying to dry up that one portion of the track because apparently somebody knocked over a water barrier, or the rain from Saturday kind of affected.
What I heard was that came from either the air conditioning in the suites, or somebody had dumped their cooler out in the suites and it went onto the track. I mean, there's a couple of contrasts.
Amazing.
But it came from somebody in the suites right there. It didn't come from a car or a water barrier. So yeah, but essentially, I'm like, what are you thinking, man? You know, dump your cooler out onto the track if that's what.
Yeah, I think there's a wall here. I can just dump it against the wall. It
Yeah,
won't
we'll just
matter.
dump this over here. But the other speculation it was the air conditioner condenser, catch valve, whatever catches the condensate air conditioner had overflowed or fall off or whatnot. But yeah, it was.
Yeah, I was walking down to the paddock area by that point, and I noticed that there was water and all that. And there were moments where they're having a hard time trying to get the cars through the area without needing to put the red flag, because I think if they put the red flag on that moment, the race would have been shortened. It might run much longer than it would have. So I applaud IndyCar for at least trying to get it dried up, sacrifice some laps. But after that, it finally got some rhythm going with Colton Herta, who had a superb, almost a perfect weekend up to that point. And then out of nowhere, Ericsson, through strategy and cautions falling in his favor, he was back in the mix. It actually was a strong contender. And then more strategy came in where you had guys like Connor Daly and Roman Grosjean leading for a cup of coffee. And then I think it was the caution involving Cody Ware that changed the complexity of the game, that kind of really knocked Grosjean out of the running as far as the race win is concerned, because there was that moment where Grosjean and Ericsson were 1-2. So if you remember Baku many years ago, they both had a moment, but I was like, okay, they had a moment in Baku, but it looks like maybe we're going to see a good moment between them, maybe fighting for the win. Not the case, as I mentioned, with Grosjean. So
Grosjean got caught out on that yellow, and then Ericsson managed to just save fuel through the final yellow and not make that last pit stop. So Grosjean got buried deep in the field.
Yeah,
you know, as did somebody else was right up there. Escapes me right now. Was it Hunter Ray? Hunter Ray was right up there and got buried.
Yeah, I think Rossi was another one, because Rossi
MIA
too.
Yeah, Rossi got caught out. So, but Lev Ericsson out front with
in a closing lips
with Connor Daly, or not Connor Daly. I'm sorry,
Colton
Herta giving good chase.
He was literally the only car that could cut a deficit all weekend. He just had it dialed in. And then about 12 to go in that hard brick corner, passed down the tunnel. I mean, the bridge, excuse me, tunnel. I don't know what I'm thinking, and then Herta locked up, made a mistake, and that's all she wrote for Herta. He kind of overdrove it, and then 5 laps later, he hit that barrier in the same area where he kind of lost the race. It hard into the wall. For whatever reason, it really gave me some Senna Monaco 88 vibes, minus the fact that it was not a 45-second lead over on pros. But just how perfect that week was, and then all to go awry. It's like it's been the tale of all season. The car to beat finds ways to lose in heartbreaking fashion. That's been the theme all year long.
Yeah, well, like I said, this whole race came down to strategy. Mm-hmm. Because Ericsson's strategy of crashing on 5 laps in worked well against Herta's strategy of crashing with 5 laps to go.
Yeah, they brought up a quick.
Oh, come on, that's funny. You're supposed to laugh at that.
No, I understood the joke. Like, yeah, do it in the first 5, not in the last 5.
Yeah.
But as I said, like, late race red flag, then it helped, and then Dixon was in position, probably maybe stealing one, but Ericsson just had a stronger restart. Just Dixon couldn't find anything, and Ericsson, the one who flew up in the air, probably sustained suspension damage, definitely front wing damage, won the race. And that's like the second time I've seen essentially a red car win. The other one being Eric Jones in the Clash, 2020.
Yeah, you got to admit those Delaras are pretty tough. They really are, because we've seen them take a good slapping and still continue. But so I want to talk about restarts, okay? Because that's been kind of like the prevailing topic. That if they would have kept the restarts on the bridge where they did the initial start, we wouldn't have had quite as many issues. Now, this is actually backed up by some data. If you look at the fact that the support races, the Trans Am race had their restarts on the bridge, and they ran relatively trouble free. The SRO races had their restarts where the IndyCar racers did that being in the stadium section, and they ran the bulk of their laps under yellow as well. So, I mean, so there's definitely something to that. And at the same time, I gotta side with Sebastian Bourdais, who was almost in tears when he was knocked out of the race, because this has happened to him a number of times. And it's the short track. Let's check up the field before we go and accordion affect them all that causes this nonsense. And you've got a really short straightaway there before you have a turn there in front of the stadium section. And it just literally, I mean, there's no sense in that.
Yeah, it's a weird system with some of these areas where they start and restart. And for that one, I think the only concern of doing the restarts on the bridge is that nobody sees it. And of course, you want people to see the start finish but on restarts just to see what's going to happen. The only people that get to see something is those that are sitting through, especially the infamous Grandstand 6. But I get your point.
Yeah, I mean, because like I said, like the the SRO guys had the same struggles that the IndyCars guys did on restarts, where they would kind of funnel into that first little turn there, coming out of the stadium section. So I mean, at the end of the day, IndyCar is going to get some input from the drivers. They're going to look at widening some areas. Then maybe they'll move the restart zone. Some people have said that, the track needs more runoff areas, but I think Bobby Rahal had the best comment when he said, there's no runoff areas at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Which I thought was kind of funny, it's a bit of a straw man argument, but yeah, it was funny. You gotta appreciate Bobby Rahal for that. But at the end of the day, let's talk about 110,000 people weekend attendance. The best television ratings for a race on cable since sometime in the 80s. I mean, you've got to really kind of take that in and say, wow, this event has a lot of potential. We do need to tweak the product on the racetrack on race day so we don't piss away this potential we have. But my gosh, the fans turned out in droves, and even if you look at the shots from downtown on Broadway, not how many people were just there having fun and celebrating and enjoying the party atmosphere. A wonderful event. True.
I've just got to laugh because that's an understatement, because apparently the weekend the race was held, there's like dozens bachelorette parties, but that's a different story for another time. But real quick about the restarts before we transition to the crowd. The Trans Am race did all right for the most part. Stadium Supercars were able to get through okay. So I think it's just a matter of certain things work, certain things doesn't. But with the crowd, it was definitely a massive atmosphere by far. I think they hit a massive home run. The question is the follow-up here, essentially with some of the flaws that they dealt with. Naturally, when it's an inaugural event, you probably will have those. Is how will the second year go? How will the third year go? And so on. Will those people come back? Or because what they saw is kind of like, to some element, Crash Course TV, and casuals tend to enjoy Crash Course TV. But those purists are the ones that are going to be more vocal about it because they want to see a good quality street race and then venue that will succeed. And some people was even brought up, well, they could have gone to Lebanon and run on an oval, but
the problem is going out to Lebanon and run the oval, you would not attract that crowd.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You are there right there in the heart of downtown Nashville, with just a bunch of other stuff to do. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
If you want to walk away from the racetrack, you go right over that pedestrian bridge. You've got bars, restaurants, live music, all kind of fun stuff to do. That track in Lebanon is kind of out in the sticks, and there's nothing out there. And this is one of the problems with the oval races, is they have such a light schedule too. Sometimes they have almost, 0 to no support races. and it's just a lot of downtime and nothing to do. This, between the fan zone within the course and the vendor activation area and sponsor activation area and the kid zone and all that stuff, and plus just all the stuff around there, it makes for it's a Long Beach. It's a Long Beach or it's a Toronto. You've got that street festival atmosphere. Yeah, maybe you don't watch the race. Maybe you go there for the party. Heck, people go to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway to jam in the snake pit, casually unaware that cars are zipping behind them at 250 miles an hour. So, I mean, but to each their own. As long as folks go there and have a good time, that's a win. That's money in the bank for the promoters in the series. But you're never going to duplicate that out there at the Nashville Super Speedway.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things where bring the people. Whether or not, and then Lebanon will probably bring more of the purist people as well, but it's just a matter of how many will show up for it, and also support racing is vital. That's the thing about Nashville. They had support races aplenty. Even in that big 4-hour gap between warm-up and the actual IndyCars, you still had SRO, the vintage IndyCars, and stadium super trucks along with live music along the way. They have stadium super trucks. Yeah. They're going to have IMSA and Formula Drift.
Right. Yeah, exactly. They've got a full slate of stuff to watch or to do. And that what makes it successful as an event. Now, tweaking the product is the next thing here, because I know there's some folks that are very disappointed with the race, and there are some folks that are disappointed with the experience, and a lot of that is just growing pains with the new venue. Again with the street closures and the grandstands not completed, but those are all things that they can take good notes on, and they have a whole year to work on that. And I look forward to that. I believe this race is on a 3-year contract. But I look forward to the next 2, and then hopefully they can go ahead and sign on for longer, because I think Nashville is a great market for the series.
Yeah, and it shows not just and it's just racing in general, like with IndyCar and then NASCAR as well. Especially all that talk trying to get the fairgrounds into the National Touring Series, which that's a whole different animal, which I believe is more doable compared. Well, I can't even say that anymore because North Wilkesboro is trying to be in the talks of maybe coming back as well. However many years they've been saying that, and still a topic. But for Nashville,
hey, you want to talk about a track with nothing to do around there? North Wilkesboro, it's right up there with Darlington is in as far as being in the sticks.
Yeah, it's not that far away from me. It's not that far.
Darlington, at least it's like what, 15 something minute drive from Florence. There's at least some stuff. Florence, just don't walk to a restaurant or to a venue. To bring your own vehicle, get with some buddies or vice versa, or because there's no sidewalks, and that's apparently a thing in the South that I've learned this year more than anything else. Sidewalks are not a thing in the South.
No, they're not. And if you do walk, you get arrested. Or at least asked if you're okay.
Asked if you're okay, yeah. You'd be better off driving your lawnmower down the street than walking in some of these smaller southern towns. But gosh, we're way off topic. So now,
Ericsson though.
Eric, let's talk about Ericsson, okay? Because and Richard, I want to bring you into the conversation as well. Mm-hmm. And we've been talking about Ericsson for this is his 3rd year in the series, right? And we've all had high hopes for him. And I know this particular one came with a bit of luck, although he did win a race fair and square on his own. But Chip Ganassi is now in a position to take 1, 2, 3 in the championship, provided Ericsson has a few more good races up his sleeve. Dixon is right there. Dixon jumped from 4th to 2nd in the points. Palou is still leading. Last time the same team had 1, 2, 3 in the championship, I believe, was 1994 with Team Penske with Little Al, Emo, and Paul Tracy. So this is momentous for both Ericsson and Chip Ganassi if they could pull this off. Now, Richard, you followed Marcus and know him pretty well. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about Marcus a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, he's a he's what you'd call a solid, a solid driver in the European scene. He junior categories, he didn't really dig up any trees, didn't do anything amazing, but he did a good, solid job. Excuse me. Had an opportunity there with, I think it was Sauber there for a couple of years, and I think he may have even done some races for was it Caterham? I think he did a couple of races for, or some races for. I may be mistaken there, but his whole Formula One career was spent pretty much at the back of the pack, unfortunately. So it's difficult to really quantify the guy's ability, but as anybody at that level, anybody who can get into Formula One is a very, very, very talented driver, and he's maybe again one of these drivers that sort of succeeded outside of the goldfish bowl that is Formula One, and I think he's doing really well in IndyCar, and he's starting to get on top of it, and he's starting to understand what it takes to be competitive in the series. And probably the championship maybe a little bit out of his grasp this year. I think it's probably between the top two, but obviously it depends on, he could have a couple of really good results and he can be right back in there. But he's in a big team, he's in a well-structured team, he's in a well-organized team. It's probably, Ganassi, Penske are probably the two most, I'm not saying this in a negative way, the two most Formula One-like teams out there in terms of the professionalism and their engineering resources and their execution. So I think it's a good fit for him. And yeah, he's starting to get the job done. Was he lucky in Nashville? Yes. But you can also say this is the guy that held off Colton Herta for a dozen laps or so at least and forced Herta into a mistake. At the end of the day, if Herta had been out leading by himself, by 20 seconds or whatever it was, I don't think he would have made that mistake. The only reason he made the mistake is because Ericsson basically made him make that mistake by pushing, by driving incredibly well. They had that car set up perfectly for defensive driving. It was pretty slick, down those two long straights there. So it was very difficult to get in the tow. He wasn't having to use the push to pass, which certainly helped him conserve the fuel mileage there towards the end of the race. And he was solid in the areas of the track where Herta was quick, but Herta was able to get past him because Herta was quick in the slow sections and the twisty sections of the track, if you like. So
yeah, I did remember reading that Ericsson was running a lot less rear wing.
Well, for part of the race, he wasn't running any front wing. So
no, I'm talking about the rear
yes,
wing.
Yeah,
rear wing. He was running less
was skinny,
less rear wing that enabled him to just build that gap on those long straightaways. Which from a setup standpoint, it was brilliant when you're in front.
Yeah. And you saw it. You clearly saw that. The guy was doing a. You could see from like the camera, the sort of helicopters and the like, that, even without using push to pass, he was pulling away from Herta, who did have push to pass. So, they set up the car perfectly. And, you just put it in that position and get it done, and that's exactly what he did. So I don't buy this, concept that he was lucky. I mean, he was lucky that he survived that initial impact with Bourdais, without a doubt. But beyond that, the drive itself was a fantastic drive, and I don't think Herta lost that race. I think Ericsson won it because he put Herta under pressure, and he made mistakes, and he got the result from it. So fair play to the guy.
Exactly. I like your comment when you said, if you make it to Formula One, you're one of the best drivers in the world, because a lot of times I read these comments about what they call Formula One rejects.
No, please.
And this goes all the way.
There's also another word that people tend to use. It starts with Euro and ends with. I'm not saying that on there.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, but this goes back to the days of, say, like Teo Fabi coming over and winning the pole at Indy. They said, "Oh, this guy couldn't cut it in Formula One," so. And
it's a different world.
Yeah, so he comes over to Indy and he's really good. So does that mean that the IndyCar drivers are horrible? You could read it that way, you know what I mean? But not necessarily. It just means that the disparity in Formula One rides are if you're not in a top car, because Formula One is like anything else, a constructors championship, and you've got the so who's ever got the best car is going to win. So if you're not in that best car, you're not going to win. You come to Indy where there's a bit more of a level playing field. So I mean, when you call these guys rejects, it just
there's some that made the transition back to, or vice versa. They went up to. Some of them, like Mansell, people would say it went down, but Card was at that point in the 90s, like it's close to rivaling Formula One as far as the top caliber. Sure, you had your paid drivers that were your quote unquote back markers, but you also had that. You always have that in Formula One, but you also have that in IndyCar. On the IndyCar side, it's just only really one or two, and they're mostly just the part-time upstart teams. And then Zach Brown said it best, if I recall, if it was Zach Brown on Sunday, that when McLaren Racing bought 75% of the majority stake, STAKE, not the food like I made on the reference I made on Twitter, but it's a driver sport more than a team sport, but also the team element in IndyCar, whereas Formula One is about the constructors and do what you can to help the team out.
Yeah, right. It is, and it's interesting, that is also very much the mentality of a lot of all US racing series. NASCAR probably more so than IndyCar. NASCAR, you don't give anything about your teammate. You want to beat your teammate. They will wreck a teammate at some of the smaller. Now, the bigger teams, the Gibbs, the Hendricks, the teams like that, they've maybe got it together a little bit better than some of the smaller teams. But I've been in teams where I've talked to guys and say, hey, this car did really good, and they're like, we don't care. So it is a different sport and it's a different world. But you look at Ericsson's background. The guy had 5 years in Formula One. You don't have 5 years in Formula One by being average. He never had a stellar, GP2 career as it was. Excuse me. He's only won. I'm just checking his results here. I don't know this. I'm not his biographer or anything like that. But you look at his history. He won the Formula BMW UK Championship in 2007. And then in 2009, he won the All Japan Formula 3 Championship. But those are the only two championships he's won. You look at, he came second in GP2 final series, which was some offshoot of GP2. But, his best season in GP2 was the 6th place overall. So it was never amazing. Had a solid career in Formula One, had a dozen or so points-based finishes. His best finish was 8th in a race. And then, he's come over to IndyCar. And you know what I like about it? He's done it the proper way. He's done it the methodical way. And he hasn't sort of gone about shouting his mouth off saying how great he is and how, feeling entitled about being a Formula One driver in IndyCar. He's gone about it properly and he's done a really, really, really good job of it. So, I've got to think the guy deserves a lot of credit and, give it, maybe he's one of these guys that when Scott Dixon finally steps away, and he'll be the one that could potentially carry that Ganassi mantra forward into the future. You look at it, he's won. I think I'm right in saying he's Ganassi's winningest driver this year. I think he's actually won more. He's Pillow's won 2 as well, hasn't he?
They're both
they're
Dixon's the single winner.
2 and 2, and Dixon's won 1. Yeah.
Yeah, so
that's what I mean. They're all 3 of them are top of the order. Yeah,
you look at Pillow's results, and he's got a couple more sort of 3rd and 4th place finishes than Ericsson, and on any other given day with a caution at the right phrase time, it could be Ericsson that was top of the championship. So I think Ganassi have got 2 really good. Ericsson's in his late 20s, early 30s now, so he's not a young kid, but they've got a solid group for them to build on going into the future. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
No, for sure. And I felt like this season was going to be a telling of how he was going to do, because he got better over time, but this season he's broken through big time, Marcus, because I felt like something tells me if he keeps it. Remember, this is me, the dum-dum, who thought if Johnson is on par with Ericsson, this could be a great, strong season. Lo and behold, Ericsson is the one. Ericsson is a dark horse title contender where Johnson is struggling to even get a top 25 finish, depending on how the week goes or how many cars show up.
Well, I mean, yeah, I was gonna say some of the grids have 24 cars, so that helps Jimmy out. His
Top 20
quest
there.
for a top 25. Yeah, but so anyway, I want to back up a little bit because you did mention McLaren and buying the stake in Smith Peterson. So they are essentially no longer partners with with Sam Schmidt and Rick Peterson.
Correct.
They are the controlling.
McLaren.
So this is
runs the
this is 100% McLaren run now. You won't see a bunch of changes, outwardly, but inwardly, you're going to see, old Sam and Rick have a lot less input. They'll still be there. They'll still be, helping with this and that. And we do know that Sam Schmidt is a fantastic development or driver coach in as far as picking new drivers. But they also did commit to the fact that the two drivers they have this year, being Felix and Pato, will both return next year with the possibility of a third car for 2022 and a definite three cars in 2023. So that's kind of exciting. That's another full-time entrant on the grid by 2023 at the latest, but perhaps a little earlier if we, get some funding in there. So, Richard, what are your thoughts on that? McLaren has vast resources, deep pockets, and a wonderful racing history for them to totally absorb themselves in the IndyCar at this point. That speaks well for the series, does it not?
Oh, of course. Yeah. I mean, I think, they've gone about it the right way. There was the sort of the first time they tried to do it with Alonso when they tried to run him, as their own sort of entity, and that just sort of fell flat on the face, didn't it? But I think it certainly helped that they've gone away and, gone about this properly and are doing it methodically, if you like. It's great. It shows the series, how they can, go about things the right way. Again, I talk about drivers doing it the same way. They don't come in and are like, oh, look, we're going to come in here and dominate the series and be, this arrogant sort of like, I'm the Formula One guy, you can go and play your little IndyCar games over there. They've come in and they've gone about it in the right way, and they're doing it methodically and respectfully. And it's proving a point, and it's working well to a certain extent with that. So, you've got to give them a lot of credit for that. So yeah, I'm really pleased, and I'll be honest with you. They're doing better this year than I expected they would. I really am. I think they've, Pato's obviously a very, very talented driver. But I'm still a little bit surprised that he's up there where he is. But fair play to the guy. He's done a great job, and
he's really done a good job of coming into his own this year. After kind of a rocky start trying to get into the series, after he was promised a ride and bounced out of it and sent to Japan and sent to Formula 2, and so and now he's found a home, and he's found some comfort there, and he's producing results. I mean, he's still got a lot to learn. His talent is still very raw, but he's also very young, and I've got high hopes for this guy.
Yeah, there's a lot that we could say about that as far as raw VKV1 and Colton Herta. Still, we talked about Herta a minute ago. He still has some raw elements where mistakes are prone, but when he's good, he's good. And when he's meh, he's meh. It's
but mistakes are what cost you, though, isn't it? You look at it, and we talked about this before on the show, and I have my opinion. I know there's no doubt to my mind that Colton Herta is an extremely talented driver. Don't get me wrong. Don't think that I have any beef with him, outside of that. But there's just something, I don't know. is he this next superstar that's going to dominate the series for the next 10 years? I just don't think he is. I think there's too many mistakes in there. And I know he's young. He's 21 now or something like that. But you look at other guys at 20, you look at Max Verstappen at 21, never made anywhere near as many mistakes as this. You look at, guys like George Russell at that age, again, they make a few mistakes, but not as many. You look at Lando Norris, again, very few mistakes. That's the difference. The guy makes to my mind, I mean, he's won, how many races has he won this year? He's won a race.
He won St. Pete.
He has 4 career wins. And
he's won one this year.
One this year, yeah. He won the season opener, yeah. And
every time, 8th in the standings.
Yeah, every time he's won, he's dominated. But the races he hasn't won, he's been an also ran.
Nowhere. So I'm just looking here. So they have this, I'm just looking very quickly on the sort of race results page on LinkedIn. Wikipedia here. Sorry, again, I don't know this off the top of my head. But they sort of, he's had 1, 2, 3 results so far this season outside of the top, basically outside the top 17, I think they ranked that colour there, or didn't finish, sorry. Yeah, so he's had 3 races this year where he didn't finish. And he's had another 1, 2, 3, 4 races outside of the top 10. So he's had 7 races out of 11 or 12 where he's been outside of the top 10. You look at Palou, he's had 2 outside of the top 10. Dixon, 1 outside of the top 10. Award, 3 outside of the top 10. Newgarden, 3 outside the top 10. Ericsson, 3 outside the top 10. Rahal, 3 outside.
Those are the guy at the top of the championship. Yep.
Exactly.
You need that consistency.
He's nowhere on a regular basis. I mean, if BK had taken part in Road America, he would be ahead of Herta in the championship. So Herta would have been 9th, just ahead of Takuma Sato.
Sato could be on his way out. Full-time wise.
Something. He just has to stop having these bad weekends and these just like weekends where he's just not at the races, literally. It's not. A kid at 21, okay, he's been in the series 3 or 4 years now. Is this his 3rd full-time season or 4th full-time season now?
3rd. 19, 20, 21, yep. 3rd.
Yeah, so, at that age, you need to be not making... I mean, how old's Palou? Similar age? 20, 24 maybe. So
yeah, I was saying 23, 24, yeah.
Award's 22. And they're just not making the same mistakes on the regular basis. And I said, nothing against the kid at all. I think he's a real talent, but something's got to improve if he is to be a regular championship contender and a regular point scorer and somebody that will push people. You look at Scott Dixon, prime example. Is he the fastest guy out there? No. I'd put Newgarden and Herta both in a category of somebody who is lap for lap quicker than Scott Dixon. But Dixon gets it done. Last 3 finishes, 4th, 4th, 2nd. He hasn't really figured in any of those races for a win, but he's scored, as many points as pretty much anybody in those 3 races.
Yeah, you rarely see Dixon mired in the back of the pack.
No.
Rarely.
And, so that's where Herta's got, it's great. Everybody be the superstar. Everybody go out and win a race. But then if you're finishing 20th, 22nd, 19th, 13th, 16th, doesn't win you championships.
All right. So I was trying to think of a good segue from there. So let's
see. We got
it seemed like I had one more thing to talk about from Nashville, but maybe not. I don't know. So
I think we covered just about all of it for the most part, other than Hinchcliffe getting his first podium in 2 years, his first with Andretti,
which is probably too little, too late for it to save a ride for him for next year. And I think that whole team, and we've talked about this week after week, that whole team needs a little help. And I don't know if that's in the engineering department or the driver department, but they need something to kind of change their fortunes.
It's been pretty much, for the lack of better terms, almost an abysmal year for Andretti Autosport again.
Yeah. So that is exactly why you're hearing the rumors that RHR is headed to IMSA and DHL is going to be out of the series. Grosjean is likely going to end up in an Andretti car. I think Grosjean can bring a lot to the table there. The other Andretti car, I don't know who we're looking at there. Could be, Kyle Kirkwood or somebody else. I don't know, but yeah, but we've talked about this again and again. I don't want to take up all the time because we did have a cup race at Watkins Glen, which is one of my favorite tracks in the country. I wish NASCAR would run the full circuit. Maybe one day they will. Now that they've got a little more road race friendly with their schedule, maybe we'll see them run the full course at Nashville. But it wasn't Chase Elliott winning. It was young Kyle Larson, despite a fight from Chase Elliott, who started at the back.
Yeah, from what I've heard and the very few that I saw, because of course I was in Nashville, so the priority goes to Nashville over Watkins Glen. But the big thing that came out of that is that Kyle Larson and Christopher Bell tangled. Bell is not happy with Larson over it. Of course, these two go way back to the dirt stuff, so they've been very competitive. They've had a couple Chili Bowl classics, Chili Bowl duels. But this one is where Bell had apparently a great shot of winning his second cup race of the year because he won at the Daytona road course. But there was a tangle. Larson and went on to win. Chase Elliott tried to give it his all after 30 race because he failed pre-race. Gustafson got ejected, 10-point penalty. So Elliott had his work cut up for, and the fact he was able to get it back to the top three was admirable. But at the end, Larson has had his own different zip code. He finally got it together because there was, after the flat tire at Pocono, he's been relatively on the low as far as performance is concerned in my eye. So Lars is back to his winning ways, and we'll see how he does at the Brickyard and the Knoxville Nationals while at it.
So I guess the bigger story coming out of here is that now Kyle Larson has taken the lead in the points for the
equal with Hamlin.
Okay, well, he's going to be leading on tiebreaker because he's won races and Hamlin has it. So, and this is the difference between Hamlin possibly being in the chase and being out, because if we have a couple more new winners, are there enough races left to lock them all up with winners?
If a repeat winner happens at Indy, Hamlin is in by points no matter what.
Right, but if we have a new winner at Indy and a new winner at Daytona,
don't forget Michigan.
And Michigan, yeah, I was thinking there's 3 left. If we have
three
new winners,
yeah.
We have 3 new winners. Hamlin could realistically be on the outside looking in.
As long as Hamlin isn't one of those winners.
Well, okay, yeah, that goes without saying, Richard.
I still feel like Hamlin is safe. I still think it's either going to be Hendrick or Gibbs winning those, and I'm not going to count out Austin Cindric either, because if Cindric's his last Cup race for the year were to be in the mix like he was in Road America, nothing happens to him, and somehow finds a way to win, Hamlin should be in by points no matter what.
Yeah, well,
because Cindric wouldn't be eligible.
Cindric wouldn't be eligible. It'd be,
but it helps Hamlin.
It does help Hamlin if a guy, that's not doing the full schedule wins the race. So, but I mean, if you think about what other winners do we have out there that could possibly knock Hamlin out? Number one that comes to mind is obviously Kevin Harvick hasn't won this year. Harvick could certainly notch a win and knock Denny out. Who else?
There's always Daytona. Could be for all we know.
It could be anybody.
Daytona could be anybody.
Could be Eric Jones or Bubba Wallace, and that question will come if, say, Hamlin is holding that final spot via points. Would he help Bubba win, or will he be a man for himself? I would imagine he'd be a man for himself, trying to battle all out. If Bubba has a strong car in the Firecracker or the Coke 0400.
Yeah.
That's a tall order to put Bubba in the lead of the race. Those guys have been, they've been okay, but they've not been threatening to win a race at all.
And there's also, of course, De Benedetto with super speedways. We'll see once Daytona rolls along, but I don't see how Hamlin misses the playoffs at this point. I think
but it could happen. So
true.
So anyway, so we are going to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, where we've got the fantastic weekend with the IndyCars and it's Xfinity, IndyCars, and the Cup cars all sharing the bill. We've got the doubleheader on Saturday with the Xfinity and the IndyCars, and then the Cup guys have Sunday. So this will be an interesting weekend. We've got a really big field for the IndyCar race. I think we have 28 guys in there.
Yep, with the Top Gun Racing returning, Cody Ware doing the double, Cup in, IndyCar, and then Christian Lundgaard will drive the 45 car.
Yes, he's going to make his debut there, yeah. Plus, Elio is going to be running there as well in the other Shank car. Yeah, so the nice big field for IndyCars. So this should be a really fun weekend to watch. And the Cup guys have traditionally run the oval. And some guys are saying, oh, well, we missed the oval. Well, I mean, y'all haven't run the road course yet. So, but they're trying to, the Brickyard 400 was a huge success the first dozen years they had it. But then the attendance started to dwindle. So they're kind of throwing everything they can at it. And putting the cars on the road course is their latest thought. So I'd be interested to see how it goes down. I'm on record as saying time and time again, I enjoy Cup cars on a road course. So I'm kind of looking forward to this one.
I'd be curious to see how that whole thing will unfold. But yeah, because I go back to that debate. It's like, it's interesting hearing some of the comments from the Cup drivers about the oval and also the crown jewel status. Because I know I tweeted about a month ago whether or not you consider the Verizon 200 as part of a crown jewel or no, because it's a road course. It's not the oval anymore. So the Brickyard 400 as a crown jewel is dead. It has sparked a lot of debate. Some people say Bristol night race and all of that. To me, the crown jewels are the 500, the 600, the Southern 500, and the big debate in the fourth one because the Brickyard was there.
The Brickyard was the other, yeah. I've never heard them called crown jewels. I've heard them called the majors.
Yeah.
True.
And with the Brickyard 400 not being a thing anymore, it's just the Verizon 200. I put one of the Talladega races. The only reason why I put a Talladega race is because it goes back to the original Winston Million. But people can add a fourth or a fifth now.
I think that putting Talladega in there is completely appropriate because that's the track that, number one, still packs a great crowd, and number two, still puts on a great show. So,
you know what, though, it's creating something for the sake of creating this whole concept of, the crown jewels or the Grand Slam or whatever it was. They're just races. It's when one race becomes more important than the other that's when you start to devalue the other races, which I think is the problem NASCAR has.
It's the problem that IndyCar has.
Yep. And we've talked about that on this show before, haven't we? Yeah.
All right, we've got a couple minutes left. Now, we do want to mention, Richard, you had brought to my attention earlier, Valentino Rossi. Yeah. Valentino Rossi, although he's not usually a guy we follow, but in the world of motorsport, he's certainly very accomplished motorcycle racer, and he has announced his retirement and his intent to drive cars going forward. Now, Richard,
the phrase and the notion that a driver can be considered or a rider in this case can be considered a legend of this sport is a I think it's bandied around far too often. But I think that Valentino Rossi, in the 25 years he's been competing in MotoGP, from the 125s through to the current MotoGP series, he's entered. By the time he's finished his career at the end of the season, it'll be over 425 races. And I doubt he's going to win any this year, but he'll have won over 115 of those. So pretty much a 1 in 4 win ratio is a phenomenal achievement. And, the guy's as I say, a legend of MotoGP and a legend of motorsport. He's done so much for the sport of the two-wheel variety. The last 2 or 3 years, he hasn't really been on it. He hasn't won a race since 2017, hasn't won the championship since 2009, which is incredible to think. He won his first 9 championships within a 15-year span, and the last 10 he hasn't won anything. But yeah, he's been a phenomenal, figure for the sport, really, and how he's carried it, and how he's gone up against so many other great drivers in that time, and beaten them, and outlived them, if you want, not figuratively, but their careers anyway. Guys like Casey Stoney, phenomenal driver who beat Rossi for a couple of years, and then went up and retired because but Rossi's just stuck to it, doing something he's loved. So and he has done. He's driven Formula One cars in testing events with Ferrari, and there was a real serious consideration around the time when he was involved with Ducati in the early 2010s of him going to Sauber for a year and then potentially moving up to the Ferrari seat. There were some very, very serious discussions there that got pretty close to being signed. He's done the Rally of Great Britain. I know he's talked about doing Le Mans or wanting to be involved in Le Mans as well. So the guy's, he's a petrol head, for want of a better word. And I think he'll do, he's going to take up, four-wheel racing, I think, a little bit more when he retires. But it's going to be great to see.
It'll be interesting to see what the next chapter in his career is. I could easily seeing him walking right into a WEC team or an IMSA team and contributing immediately. So, but my favorite Valentino Rossi story has nothing to do with Valentino Rossi, and it happened during the 2016 Indy 500, right after Alexander Rossi had won the race, and I was coming down from the media center trying to make my way in the victory circle. And, there are a lot of folks who are pushing and pulling, and Alexander Rossi was largely unknown. I mean, I knew who he was from his Formula One days and his signing the contract with Andretti, but I heard a guy behind me who was, he wasn't a journalist or a thing, but he was there at the bequest of some company, hospitality. And I just heard this guy say, Rossi, isn't that motorcycle guy? So that just shows you how ingrained that name Valentino Rossi is, whether you really follow motorsports or not. It's like everybody, you might not watch football, but everyone knows at least one football player, right?
Yeah.
Or you might not watch basketball, but you've heard of Michael Jordan, so you might not watch motorcycles, but you heard of Valentino Rossi. So
yeah, and I didn't realize this. I'm just reading this, that Rossi actually drove a Kyle Busch's Nationwide car in 2013 and set a lap time of 185 mile an hour average speed, which would have said here qualified him in the top 10 of the whatever nationwide race as it was at the time. So he's certainly driven a lot of four wheels, and I'm not saying we're going to see him in NASCAR anytime soon, but he certainly had experience of it.
Absolutely. All right, so we've got actually no time left, but I do want to go around the table and let's make some picks for both the IndyCars and the NASCAR races racing on the same track. And Louise, I'll start with you.
Grosjean pulls it off in the big machine spike coolers Grand Prix. And as far as the Cup race, let's go with Truex. All
right, now Richard, your thoughts?
After bashing him, I'm going to go for Colton Herta winning the IndyCar race, and let's go with Austin Cindric to win the. That is his last race, isn't it, in the Cup Series this year?
Yes, yeah.
He could upset a few people by winning that one.
He certainly could. All right, I'm going to go with a guy who's kind of got his job on the line, but who's really knows his way around the Indianapolis road course, and that's Simon Pagenaud. Because Penske is due for a good day. That's for sure. And I think Simon's the guy to give them that. And in the Cup race, it's hard to go against Chase Elliott on a road course. Even if he gets a penalty and starts in the back, so I'm going to go with Chase. But with that being said, guys, we are out of time. We're in fact in overtime. So our green-white checker will be, thank you, Richard. Thank you, Louise. I want to thank the Hoobazoo Radio Network. I want to thank iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. But most of all, I want to thank you folks who listen to us. Until next week, good night.
WHOOBAZOO, that's Hoobazoo.com.
Enter website, enter website, enter website, enter website.